Let me say good morning to all, and I want to also pay our respect from Daspan in terms of our condolences to the family and friends of Kurt and also the staff of DBS. I know it's a difficult period for all of them, and we trust in our Savior, and I'm sure that they will be comforted knowing that Kurt gave his life and soul, especially when you heard him that he had to go out during the storm early to undertake some repair work to be able to keep the station for as long as they did. And I'm sure he will be long remembered for the kind of dedication that he put to his work, and we all feel the grief for his loss this weekend. Just to give you an update in terms of DASPA, number one, we now have electrical power to the Canefield Airport, and so the Canefield Airport is now back on the grid, and that is very good news for us because we were operating with a level of difficulty at Canefield, having to operate on a small generator. And so now I'm sure the persons in customs, immigration are a lot better, knowing that because of the connection to the grid, that their working environment is a lot more pleasant than it was before. As it relates to the Woodbridge Bay Port, I must say that for us at the port, we can begin to breathe some sigh of relief in terms of the container traffic that we've been receiving ever since Maria. From September 18th, which is September 23rd to be exact, when the first container vessel arrived after Maria, through to the end of October, we received some 1,163 20-foot equivalent units into Dominica, and on the outward path, only 110 units left Dominica. So that can tell you what the story was in terms of the volume of containers that we received coming in compared to what was going out. And obviously, and as I have pointed out even to the business community, that was a serious challenge to us in terms of having to address storage, one, and being able to make the kind of deliveries based on the demand placed upon us. First and foremost, I just want to call back a little because some persons may not remember. Immediately after Maria, there was the issue was to get relief supplies and medical supplies and to move persons that require special attention out of those locations to which they were stranded because we did not have road connections to them. And so one of the things that, in terms of the decision making, was that a helipad had to be organized at the port to be able to facilitate the ease of moving relief supplies and to move persons from some of those areas, either through Canefield, Douglas Charles, or through the Woodbridge Bay Port. And then the container park was converted into a helipad for over 2 weeks. So we had to store all of these containers that were coming in within a limited area until such time that we gave the helipad operation stopped at Woodbridge Bay. But the containers did not stop. As you know, we accepted all the containers that came to Dominica, despite the fact that at one time we were only releasing relief supplies, but the commercial cargo was kept on the port. We must also bring our minds back to the fact that the business community was trapped for a couple of weeks. Not before the last week in October, the businesses began to take shape again because, as you would know, Roseau was struck and was flooded, and a number of the businesses suffered as a result of the flooding, and they could not have even access to their businesses. They also suffered what we call, or we term now, the human hurricane in relation to the inventory. And so that also impacted negatively on the business community. And once, I guess, they sorted out their issues in terms of getting access to their business, reestablishing their business entity, the important thing here was to have the inventory restocked. And so there was a tremendous call for cargo at the port, and we had to rise to that challenge. At the port, it's only until the 10th of November we got connected back to the grid. And still we are grappling with some of our electrical pole lighting that is still out, but we are gradually getting there. And so we, at one time, could not work at nights, but only had to operate during daylight hours. Now we've actually improved the system, and we have mobile lighting that would allow us to work ships at night, especially from the standpoint of the container park area. And so we have been progressing satisfactorily in terms of moving cargo to the mercantile community. And we're doing so. And last time when I reported, we were actually working up to 7 p.m. at nights to assist the truckers to move cargo to the business community. We did not mention it and we did not publicly announce it, but we were also providing service from 5 a.m. in the morning to the truckers to be able to help some of the businesses find their required supply for their inventory. And so we worked, some of our guys on the port worked from 5 a.m. in the morning right through 10 p.m. at night, all in an effort to supply the business community with the containers that they wanted in great demand. And so one of the problems we had was that the containers were coming in, but they were not going out as fast enough to be able to give us the space that was required. So we began discussion with the lines, the various shipping lines, and one of the things that we've said to them is that for us to be able to do the things we would like to do, we need their assistance. And their assistance we need is that every time a ship calls in port, we would like a certain number of empties to be loaded. And I dare say that we've been getting tremendous help from Tropical Shipping. They stand out because they actually put a vessel just to come for empties to help us in the situation that we were in. And that's why I can say we can breathe a sigh of relief today, because the load is getting easier to be able to release containers and also to store the containers that come in. For example, only this weekend, on Saturday, we received some 86 containers. And there was very little difficulty in terms of having to store those, despite the fact that we have quite a few containers still at the port. And we were also able to load as many as 70 containers going on the way out. So that tells you that, you know, we were able to move within an 8-hour span, something like you had 100 and something containers within a very short space of time. And that, I would say, hats off to the stevedores and longshoremen. I will never stop mentioning them because they're working under difficult circumstances, and yet they are able to produce at a satisfactory rate so that the ships can be turned around within a short space of time. We're doing all of this because we know that it is critical that the supplies get to the stores, get to the outlets, so that persons can be employed, because without the businesses having an inventory, then it would impact negatively on employment for a number of persons. And we would want to ensure that business can normalize as quickly as possible. As I've indicated in the past, the port is the gateway to undertaking business. Everything that comes in and goes out goes through the port or through the airport, seaport or air. It goes through with DASPA. And so we're making every effort to be able to do that. So we're doing our utmost to get containers to the business community, and that is a primary focus for us because the business community has a linkage. The linkage is to employ persons and also to supply the goods and services that persons would like to have and would like to have as quickly as possible to normalize their business, especially as it relates to building materials, because we know persons need to put back the cover over their heads, and people need to be able to continue to rehabilitate their homes. With respect to persons clearing cargo, that is, families, friends who are sending barrels and boxes to persons, we are saying that we have been destuffing containers at a rapid rate at the port. The delay has been primarily because we have one or two of the agents delaying the process in terms of making the call for release or destuffing of the containers. We still have some persons who have not been able to furnish us with the documentation for containers that arrived somewhere about the 2nd of November. So today is the 27th, and they have not been able to furnish us with the documentation necessary to undertake the destuffing of the container. So clearly the blame would fall on the port, because the container would be there since the 2nd of November, and the individual persons with their barrels and boxes would be saying that they have not received their barrels and boxes. But the question here is, until we get a release from the agent to be able to have that container destuffed, that container still remains the property and the responsibility of the agent to get the necessary information. I am happy to say to those persons, especially within the UK, that the Geese vessel came in last week and was able to discharge break bulk cargo with a number of pallet-sized cargo, which they have not done in the past. And I can say to them clearly that the doors are open to receive cargo from the UK for several weeks now, but obviously there was a hold because Geese had not made the sort of announcement, because we were not at one time accepting palletized cargo. But now that is behind us. We have covered storage to be able to accommodate that, and so that is not something that we have to worry anymore in terms of the persons, especially from the UK. We now have 8 reefer units that we can plug directly because we are back onto the grid. So those persons with reefer products that had to be able to take them, what we call on landing, immediately after they landed, they had to take it into their businesses. We can now plug them onto the reefer outlets at the port. And so we have made that accommodation. So again, those persons bringing in the reefer containers can feel very comfortable that in the event that they are unable to pick up at the port, that we can actually have them plugged in to our electrical outlets there. As it relates to airport, the airport activity, last week we had Liat introducing a new flight into Dominica from Antigua, getting into Dominica at 6:40 a.m. And so yet there is another flight that, in terms of air access into Dominica, we had to open the airport earlier than normal. 5:30 a.m. is the time that was scheduled to have the airport open to facilitate that flight. So we've made the necessary adjustment, and I want to thank the air traffic controllers, the customs officers, immigration officers, and all the people at the airport, especially so the security and the maintenance personnel that have to get up very early and prepare the airport to receive the persons early in the morning. My hats go off to you, because we are always responding to the challenges that are placed before us. And so as we do so, our staff respond very positively. And that is one good trait that we have, is that the staff, they do the action and then ask the questions afterwards, in the sense that they put the people first, and that is a very good trait of the staff of DASPA, in that they operate in the public interest. So they go the extra mile just to make sure that the public is satisfied. Over the last 2 Friday evenings, we've been also operating as late as 7 p.m. To be able to facilitate individual persons collecting their barrels and boxes at the port. We are made aware that there are lots more of these to come, and so we are preparing ourselves to be able to receive them, especially knowing that the Christmas season is drawing near. And so we are actually preparing, our operations staff is preparing themselves for what we told would be an increased amount of individual packages coming through to be destuffed. So in terms of the destuffing, we're back in terms of 1 to 5 days in terms of destuffing. Because of the sheer volume that we have, but we're trying to encourage persons to speak to those sub-agents that are in Dominica to try to get the destuffing notices to the DASPA as quickly as possible. Because as soon as they can get them to us, we will try our best to see how we can get these containers destuffed. For those of you following in the social media from Facebook page, we do have a Facebook page that we publish the containers as soon as they're destuffed. So lots of persons we see are following that. So we're using that medium as well to be able to have persons follow on and to get the information so that they can go to the agent. Again, I would repeat, to get cargo out of the port, if you get a barrel, a box, or generator, for example, you need to go to the agent, get an agent release form from the agent, and then you can proceed to the port, go to tailgate. These things from a generator, a refrigerator, tarpaulins, these you don't have to pay anything for in terms of foodstuff and supplies because it is free. But you need to, for the documentation purposes, you need to go to the tailgate, get it done, and then go to customs to get an evaluation of your package. Again, if it falls under the relief items, you will still have to go and get the necessary documentation. But once the documentation is passed, again, it is free, you will be able to have possession of the cargo and to get it out of the port. So that process is not a very long process, very easy process. It is when it comes to the other commercial aspects where you would find that the necessary customs documentation has to be done, some of them in advance, to be able to clear the cargo out of the port. We are encouraging as many of the businesses with the what we call the full container loads to clear their containers off the port. I think a number of them are taking advantage of the situation now, and I think they're being facilitated by customs, where customs go on their premises to supervise the release of those cargo from the containers. And that is actually helping us because if all of the consignees had to be destuffing their containers at the port, it would create, a serious backlog for us. So that's where we are easing the process, and we're doing fine. In terms of Portsmouth, I must say that in Portsmouth that we are still a little behind in terms of getting direct power from Domlec. The situation is that we're trying to deal with some of the issues we have on the ground because the electrical lighting there was badly hit, and we're trying to make sure that first safety comes first for us in terms of the operation, and then we gradually will see how we can improve the lighting into Portsmouth. So we're hoping that within the next 2 to 3 weeks that we will have the cargo shed completely restored in Longhouse, and that once again we can have full covered storage of cargo in Portsmouth. So from the Portsmouth Port standpoint, there's a little time lag because we are in fact taking on some other things before we get to Portsmouth. But in the meantime, I know that the Northern Coordinator down there and her team is doing a fantastic job in moving things along in Portsmouth. So generally, from an update standpoint, we are seeking to move cargo a lot faster, and we are getting the cooperation of the ships. So as long as the ships continue to move the empty containers, it will create and facilitate the ease in which we can serve the business community here, and it also will create a lot more means for storage of these containers. We've gone as high as 5 containers in some instances to ensure that we can store containers as high as possible. So we are maximizing the use of our equipment, because the equipment we have at the port can stack containers 5 high. So we're in fact doing that, and I want to again commend the operators who are taking on the task of putting these containers at that height and being able to maneuver within the very tight turning radius that the equipment has to operate, given the volume of containers that we had over the last 2 months. So in essence, I just want to say that from a DASPA standpoint, that we're in fact doing the best that we can. And I want to reassure the business community that we will do everything possible to ensure that you clear the goods once it has satisfied with the customs requirements and have your inventory again back up to the levels that you wish to have it, and which was probably even better than pre-Maria's situation. Because the cargo being at the port does not really help us, but when the cargo leaves the port, really we've earned our keep in terms of ensuring that the cargo we receive is released in the condition that it is received, and so it makes it a very good for us in terms of a smooth transition. So in essence, I don't think I have that much more, except if you have any questions for me.